Oh, how many years has it been? Is my dad still alive? My ex-husband, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, approached me with a smirk and said with a hint of sarcasm, just a short while ago, he'd have done anything to avoid seeing me. It made me wonder what had changed and why he'd now approached me. I considered asking him directly, but I wasn't keen on hearing excuses about the past from him now. From his perspective, I probably just seemed to be staring at him impassively. My silence seemed to ignite his short temper, and he blurted out, "Hey, aren't you going to say anything? Seeing me after such a long time, are you shy?" His somewhat ludicrous assumption made me chuckle within the mind. Not wanting to leave room for misunderstanding, I responded with a smile and the truth. Why would I be shy? Your father passed away recently, and I inherited $7 million from him. Seeing his shocked expression was slightly amusing. In front of his astonishment, I couldn't help but laugh. I, Millie, am a 48-year-old ordinary housewife. Currently, I live in my husband's house, taking care of my father-in-law and living each day joyfully. We got married quite late, and due to various circumstances, we never had children. But now, I sometimes think that maybe it was for the best. I first met him over 10 years ago. We got to know each other when my company, which I joined after university, competed against his company in a project. The day our company had been placed first in a competition, he approached me kindly at the celebration party. He was genuinely considerate and caring. We quickly hit it off, and before I knew it, we started dating. Due to our busy work lives, we didn't date often. Still, he took the bold step to propose. But life wasn't just about romantic moments. His family only consisted of his father. His mother passed away when he was young, and his father raised him by himself. His father was a reliable figure in a reputable local factory for years. However, around the time he graduated from university and began his new life, his father lost his eyesight completely due to an accident at the factory. From then on, living alone became challenging, and he required constant support. When my parents learned the truth, they were strongly against our marriage. However, he earnestly asked me with tears in his eyes, "I want you to support my father with me." His sincere feelings resonated with me, and I made up my mind. Despite our parents' objections, we decided to take care of his father together. He asked me, "Please take a break from your current job and help out with my dad." We ended our contract with the caregiver who had been supporting us, especially his father at home, and I promised to assist with his father's daily needs. For his father's sake, I started a new chapter in my life. Perhaps because I was still a bit naive at the time, I accepted his request without giving it deep thought. And so began my daily life, taking care of my father-in-law. However, soon after stepping into this new life, then I realized caring was harder than I had imagined, but what shocked me more was how my husband had changed. Before we got married, he was very considerate and always looked out for me. But since our married life began, he started changing. For instance, one day, when I was overwhelmed with caregiving and couldn't prepare dinner, he silently started eating a meal he bought from a burger shop. Of course, not preparing dinner was my responsibility, but if he gave me the simple words such as "it must have been tough for you" or "do you need help," would have made a difference. After eating, he left his trash on the table and went straight to bed after a shower. His attitude made me feel lonely. It felt like I was just a free helper to him. This was how our life started, but I wished we communicated and understood each other more. My father-in-law, sensing the tension, gently held my hand and apologized. His kindness made me teary-eyed. In front of him, I acted like nothing happened and said, "It's okay," but deep down, I felt differently. As days went on, I tried my best to get through daily life, puzzled by his cold attitude. One day, I thought, "Isn't this strange?" and told my feelings to him. However, he responded, "I'm just taking care of my own stuff," as if he didn't understand how I felt. His words left me feeling even colder. As time went by, I gradually got used to taking care of my father-in-law, and I was able to handle household tasks more smoothly. I spent more time with him, and our bond deepened. However, there were increasing nights when my husband wouldn't come home, and sudden meals out also became more frequent. Yet, I kept telling myself, it's the two of us, my father-in-law and I, holding down the fort. But then, one day, there were those words he said to me. The moment I heard them, something inside me felt shattered, and I felt an overwhelming sense of loneliness. "Hey," he began. "Lately, he hasn't been saying my name as often. It's been 2 years since we got married, but somehow, the warmth we felt in the beginning had faded. I want to talk. Come to the living room." Hearing his voice, a naive hope bubbled up within me, thinking maybe he's considering mending our relationship. My father-in-law seemed extra considerate, creating some alone time for the two of us by retreating to his room. With a flicker of hope, I headed to the living room. There was a piece of paper on the table. I noticed him looking at it. "Sit here," he said, so I quietly took the seat next to him. Realizing what the paper was, my heart skipped a beat. "You know what this is, right? I have already sent a petition for divorce to a court," he said with a grin. But that smile didn't have the warmth it used to. I wanted to be angry at his demeanor, but I just stared at the paper instead. "If you don't give any response back to court within 30 days, the divorce will be done. I just want out of this life." This life. My heart struggled to grasp the meaning of his words. His statement left me speechless. The words coming out of his mouth felt like a foreign language, and I inadvertently let out a surprised "what?" It seemed he was a bit annoyed by my reaction as he casually tossed a pen in my direction. "Do you even understand what I'm saying? I want a divorce. I'm going to start a new life with the daughter of a company president. So, I want you to speed up the proceedings." He rambled on, sounding a bit frantic. In that instant, my heart felt like it was on a roller coaster, twisting and turning. Granted, with my father-in-law's care and house chores, I had been quite busy lately, leaving little time for us. But I never even dreamt that he was having an affair. Then, I began connecting the dots: his changed attitude, coming home later than usual, and other signs. Still, I couldn't believe that he was serious. When I thought about the bond between him, me, and my father-in-law, I couldn't comprehend how we reached this point. However, his eyes were cold, and I could feel the determination in his words. I was so overwhelmed. I didn't know how to respond. After my father-in-law lost his sight, his hearing became exceptionally sharp. He could pick up even the faintest noises in the house. This home was built by him when he was young. Given its age, it was hardly soundproof, so he must have heard our entire conversation. For a moment, I considered seeking help from my father-in-law, but I quickly realized I couldn't expose him to this mess. Continuing this way, neither he nor I would find happiness. That singular thought weighed heavily on me as I picked up the pen he'd tossed and began shakily signing the affidavit of the defendant. Finally getting it. "Huh? Good. Now I can be free. Before you started taking care of my father, I used to have a caregiver for him, but they would leave at night. So I had to care for him alone, waking up multiple times. It was hard. But after marrying you, I could finally sleep through the night," he began, as if pleading his case. But I closed off my heart to his words. I didn't want to be swayed by him any longer. After I finished signing, he immediately grabbed the papers, carefully checking each word. Then, with a satisfied smirk, he looked at me and left the room. I could hear his humming. With a large bag in hand, he quickly walked out of the entrance. As I watched him leave, I repeatedly screamed "why?" in my heart. After he left, the house was enveloped in silence, leaving only me and my blind father-in-law. How much time had passed? My father-in-law placed his hand on my shoulder. Though his eyes should reflect nothing, I felt as if he understood my feelings. He probably understood the words and attitude of his son earlier. For my father-in-law, our home has always been familiar ground. Even though he sees only darkness, he can walk around the house by himself. Perhaps he came to me now because he was concerned to see me crying alone. I clung to his large frame, letting out the tears I had been holding back. There was something I've always felt deep down. I wasn't tired of taking care of my father-in-law. In fact, these moments were precious to me, and doing something for him gave my life purpose. However, my ex-husband, who was very kind at the beginning of our marriage, gradually became cold, which hurt me deeply. Maybe everything I've thought about his small actions and words was just my way of justifying myself. About 10 years later, I, who had always stayed inside the house, decided to go out for the first time in a while. As I entered the shopping mall, I felt a bit uplifted. The fresh outdoor air, the sparkling shop fronts, being surrounded by people's smiles, it felt as if the gloomy clouds over my heart were clearing. But then, a voice that brought back memories of the past intruded on this pleasant moment. "Oh, how many years has it been? Is my dad still alive?" I trembled. That all too familiar voice, one I never wanted to hear again. Yes, it was my ex-husband. For a moment, everything went dark, but I mustered the courage to look at him. He was wearing the same confident smile as always. The unpleasant memories from that time resurfaced. Taking a deep breath, I stared firmly at him. Perhaps irritated by my silence, he started speaking with his usual smug expression. But now, I'm no longer swayed by the words of my ex-husband. I look him directly in the eyes, shaking off the shadows of the past, and I renewed my resolve to move forward. When my ex-husband appeared unexpectedly, I was taken aback and stayed silent. He then said, "Hey, aren't you going to say anything? Seeing me after such a long time, are you shy?" I then told him about the passing of my father-in-law. When I added, I inherited $7 million, his eyes widened in shock. I was tickled by a mischievous urge and couldn't help but laugh. "You're joking, right?" Seeing his astonished face, I silently celebrated in my heart, thinking nailed it. I wonder if I was the one who felt the thrill and excitement of this unexpected reunion. "Want to grab a coffee and chat?" I suggested. I honestly had no intention of elaborating on the $7 million inheritance story, but since we were not catching up for a long time, I wanted to hear how he's been. So after we sat down, I mustered the courage to ask about his current situation. He opened up quite a bit about his job. It seems he's doing something different now. His arrogant attitude, which hadn't changed since before, did annoy me a bit, but I decided to stay calm and gauge his reactions. "So, how are things with the daughter of that company's president?" I asked, teasing him a little. From him mentioning his new job, I deduced he might have left his previous company. If that's the case, I doubted things would be smooth being married with the president's daughter. He looked a bit perplexed, pausing before saying in a low voice, "To be honest, things are a bit rocky, but who cares? Anyway, is the inheritance story true? Did you really get $7 million? Share some with me." His obvious expectancy made me chuckle. "Why should I share? Your name was indeed in the will, though." He looked a mix of surprise and anger, blurting out, "Why wouldn't you tell me that? I can't believe you." As his emotions came pouring out, I feigned surprise on purpose and said, "Oh, you wanted to hear. I'm sorry," smirking a little inside. Watching the shocked expression on my ex-husband's face, I sighed deeply within. "You know, back then, I called you several times, but you never answered. I wanted to inform you about your father-in-law's passing. In the end, I couldn't talk to you. And in his will, your name was there, but it clearly stated that he left you not a penny. Should I still have informed you?" I asked with a hint of sarcasm. Facing my ex-husband's bewildered expression, I was lost in memories. Last fall, my father-in-law passed away peacefully. By then, it had been 9 years since our divorce. One evening, I spent some quiet time with my father-in-law. Usually, he'd fall asleep as soon as he lay down, but that night was different. He just sat there, showing no signs of going to bed. Wondering about his unusual demeanor, I asked, "What's the matter? If you're cold, I can bring you a warmer blanket." He then pointed silently to a small box. "Open this box tomorrow and call the person whose business card is inside," he said with a calm voice that carried a certain weight. "Well, call the person on the business card. Do you have any plans?" I inquired. He gently shook his head with a smile. "No, but look forward to your birthday this year, Millie. Every year, my father-in-law would give me something lovely. Thanks to the support he received from the company he worked for before he went blind, I could lead a comfortable life with him even after my divorce without having to work." The morning after our conversation, there was an unusual silence. The comforting sound of his breathing, which I was used to hearing every day, was absent. The room was still. I could only feel the passage of time. "Good morning," I softly called out. Typically, I would hear a response like, "Good morning," but not that day. It felt as if something inside me shattered. A subtle feeling of unease gradually turned into anxiety. I quietly looked at my father-in-law's face. He wasn't breathing the calm, steady breaths he usually did in his sleep. His face was very peaceful. When I held his hand, I couldn't feel the usual warmth. The cold touch told me his heart was no longer beating. I hurriedly called for an ambulance, but a sudden wave of grief overcame me. As memories of his kindness and love for me flooded back, I couldn't stop the tears. The time we spent together, his warm smiles, the meals we shared, everything vividly played before my eyes. Even when he went blind, my father-in-law always prioritized me. His huge love for me will undoubtedly live on in my heart, even now that he's gone. Wiping away my tears, I gently held his hand. "Thank you," I whispered over and over in my heart. Although he's no longer with me, his kindness and memories will undoubtedly continue to support me. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a letter box that reminded me of our conversation last night. I gently opened it and found a business card with a lawyer's name. Tears flowed again. Recalling my father-in-law's warm voice, I dialed the number on the card. After the funeral, I found myself discussing matters at the lawyer's office. With earnest gaze, he informed me of my father-in-law's will. I had inherited more than I could have ever imagined, both from his past company and passed down through generations. There was a clause that stated not a single penny would go to my ex-husband. I realized just how much my father-in-law had thought about the future and cared for me. I also understood why my ex-husband was unaware of this fact. My father-in-law had foreseen our future and kept this from him. And now here I am, with my father-in-law's wishes in my heart, sitting across from my ex-husband who is having shock and confusion in a cafe. I'm about to begin a new chapter of my life right before his eyes. My ex-husband pleaded in a soft, whiny voice, "Lily, please forgive me. I've reflected on my mistakes. Can we start over?" There was a sense of desperation in his voice. But with a smile, I replied, "Lily, who's that?" "My name's Millie. Have you forgotten?" I set the receipt down in front of him without a word and walked out of the cafe. The outdoor air was invigorating and refreshing, making me feel like a new person. With that, I headed straight to my trusted lawyer's office, ensuring I had all the essential information about my ex-husband's recent whereabouts. I'm going to demand alimony from him. Living in the apartment I purchased with my inherited wealth felt like a dream. Surrounded by the views from the window, new furniture, and interior, every day was fulfilling and joyful. Every now and then, I would get updates from my lawyer about my ex-husband's recent activities. My ex, that seems, was abandoned by the daughter of a company president and had gotten into gambling. The alimony I was asking for was adding more pressure to his already tight situation. As I heard about his struggles, it made me even more grateful for my new life. Apparently, my ex-husband tried to reach me out through the lawyer, but the lawyer kindly declined on my behalf. Knowing this warmed my heart, reminding me of the time when I told him I wanted nothing to do with my ex after our discussions about my father-in-law's will. Life seems tough for my ex now. Already in a financial bind due to his gambling, he now also has to deal with paying me alimony. He's reportedly juggling various jobs, not just construction work. I hope he learns from his past mistakes and moves forward in life with reflection. On the other hand, every day for me is filled with joy and excitement. Acquiring the inheritance gave me a chance to pursue a dream I had always nurtured in my heart. It might sound a bit dreamy, but I've always wanted to open a flower shop. My father-in-law, back when he was well, used to love having flowers in the house. It was a small daily pleasure. I decided to chase that dream, remembering his cheerful face. Now, as I'm on the brink of starting my flower shop, every day is truly joyous, and I feel genuinely happy. My gratitude to my father-in-law is deeply etched in the depths of my heart. It's because of his kindness and support that I've slowly come to accept my painful past with my ex-husband. Now, I'm living each day staying positive. There are still moments of sadness and regret, but I feel like I'm taking steps towards my dreams every day. There were times in the past when just recalling my days with my ex-husband would bring tears to my eyes, but those feelings have considerably subsided now. For all the pain I experienced with my ex, I'm now embracing the journey of seeking my own happiness. I'm living life at my own pace, working towards my dreams and goals, and it feels incredibly fulfilling. And just the act of living such days is, in itself, a small happiness for me.